For over a decade, humanity had been silent. Once loud and full of strange energy at every Galactic Council summit, the humans had vanished. No one knew why. There were no transmissions from Earth, no ships flying through trade routes, no ambassadors in the core worlds. One day, they were part of the galaxy, and the next, they were simply gone. At first, the Council assumed it was politics. Humans had always been unpredictable. Maybe they had turned inward, lost interest in the Council's affairs. But as years passed, concern turned into fear. The Valaris said they had heard whispers on old frequencies, strange noises near Sol, sounds like static mixed with voices. The Gorshak sent scouts to the edge of the human territories, but none returned. Most species moved on, choosing to forget, but Admiral Kesrix of the Zorlon Republic could not. He had once fought beside human fleets during the border conflicts and had seen their fire chaotic but brilliant. He remembered how they reacted to pressure with innovation. He didn't believe they simply disappeared. Something was wrong. Against the orders of the Council, he authorized a stealth probe to approach the human system. It slipped past the dead border stations and entered Sol, reporting vast silence, no movement, no transmissions, no signs of war or decay. Earth was still blue and green, its moon still hung like a silent sentinel, but something felt wrong. Then, without warning, the probe was destroyed. Not attacked, erased in a flash of dark energy. Just before its systems went dark, it transmitted one final message. A voice, cold and calm, spoke in perfect galactic common. The transmission sent a shiver across Kesric's scales. The words spread through the Council like fire, igniting fear and speculation. Who sent the message? Were the humans hiding something? Had they discovered something in the dark reaches of space that made them retreat? Or worse, had something found them? Kesrix pored over every file he could find on humanity's last known movements. There were strange patterns, ship logs that never reached their destinations, research teams that never returned, mining operations on moons that had been abandoned mid-process. It was as if humanity had turned off the lights and vanished into the shadows. Some on the Council argued that the message was a bluff, that humans had simply broken apart, fallen into civil war, or destroyed themselves with their own experiments. But Kesrix remembered their eyes in battle. Humans didn't run. They didn't hide unless there was a purpose. Something was happening behind that silence. Something planned. And then, new whispers came. Merchant vessels near the rim reported seeing massive black ships with no markings, moving without sound. No engines. No signals. They just drifted, then vanished. And in each case, the ship that saw them lost its navigation data for days. Kesrix believed these ships were human. They'd gone dark. Not because they were weak, but because they were watching, preparing. But for what? He sat in his command chamber, surrounded by the stars, staring at the slowly spinning model of Earth on his display. So quiet. Too quiet. The galaxy was in uneasy peace, but the silence from Sol pressed down like a weight on the hearts of those who remembered. Something was coming. He could feel it. And whatever had silenced humanity might just be waiting to silence the rest. The stars no longer felt safe. It began with the sudden fall of Krelos 9, a fortress planet that had held for centuries. It didn't fall in days or hours, it fell in minutes. The last transmission was a scream followed by silence. Then came the loss of the Tronak Relay, a massive communication hub near the rim. Ships sent to investigate never returned. Entire systems went dark, their moons shattered, their planets burning. Panic spread like wildfire through the Galactic Council. The attackers were finally identified, a race no one had seen before, a biomechanical force that called themselves the Varnock Swarm. They were not diplomats or conquerors, they were destroyers. They didn't speak, didn't take prisoners, didn't slow down. Their ships moved like living things, massive in size, crawling with long metal tendrils and pulsing lights. No strategy worked. The Council sent fleets, but they were torn apart. The swarm didn't use energy weapons, they devoured ships, breaking them apart with claw-like machines and absorbing their parts into their own. Every time they won, they grew stronger. The Galactic Armada, made of the best from dozens of civilizations, was pulled together in desperation. It was the largest force ever seen, gathered near the Draco Rift to make a final stand. Among them was Admiral Kesrix, his eyes heavier. Now, his memories of humanity sharper than ever. He remembered the warning, "Do not wake the lions." But what choice was left? The council feared asking for help from the humans. They had been silent too long, and no one knew what they had become. But Kesrix could not forget the power he once saw in them, the raw force hidden behind their smiles. And now, when the galaxy needed them most, he decided to act. As the Armada took formation in the icy void of space, the Varnock swarm appeared on the edge of the system, a wave of black and red crawling through the stars. The council leaders argued. Some wanted to run, some wanted to surrender. Kesrix did not wait. He walked into his command deck, activated an ancient console once used to speak with human fleets, and opened the deep wave frequency. It had been unused for decades, locked behind firewalls and forgotten passwords. He spoke 6 words, clear and calm. "The swarm has come. We need the lions." The signal echoed into the dark, and then nothing. Minutes passed. Then hours. The Varnock drew closer. Panic set in. Some ships fled. Others readied for death. But still, no answer. Kesrix stood in silence, watching the enemy advance, knowing he had broken the rules, risked everything, all on a ghost. Then, as the first Varnock ships entered range, every screen across the Armada flickered. Static turned to a dark screen. A single symbol appeared, an old blue sphere wrapped in silver laurels, the Earth sigil. There was no voice, no words, only a short, repeating message in cold text. Message received. Hold position. The council officers were stunned. Some thought it was a trick. But Kesrix smiled. He had seen this symbol before, during the worst days of the border conflicts. It was always followed by something no enemy could understand: chaos, speed, and survival. The Varnock didn't wait. Their ships opened fire, and the Armada struggled to hold the line. Beams and kinetic blasts lit up the stars, and hundreds of ships were lost in moments. But the line did not break. Kesrix waited, eyes on the stars beyond the rift, hoping for a miracle. Then, just as the enemy began to press through the last defensive ring, the space behind the Armada shimmered. Not with light, but with absence. Ships emerged from black nothing, coated in stealth tech that made them nearly invisible to the eye. Thousands of vessels, silent, sleek, unlike anything the council had seen. They had no lights, no colors, just cold, dark metal. The largest of them moved like planets, slow and heavy, but impossible to stop. The humans had come. Without words, they attacked. Beams of gravity tore Varnock vessels apart. Railguns fired projectiles at near-light speeds, shattering enemy hulls. Energy bursts bent around the swarm's shields and struck their cores. The Varnock hesitated for the first time. The battlefield shifted. Council officers stared at their screens, stunned by what they saw. The humans were not just strong, they were precise. Every move had purpose. Every strike ended a threat. They fought like shadows, appearing where needed, vanishing when done. And still, not a single message came. Not a face. Not a name. Only destruction delivered with cold efficiency. Kesrix watched as one of the human command ships, Oblivion Crown, sliced through 3 Varnock dreadnoughts in seconds. He realized then this was no fleet pulled from rest. This was a force that had never stopped preparing. Humanity had gone silent, not in weakness, but in planning. And now they were awake. The battle raged, but the tide had turned. The lions had arrived. The galaxy held its breath. After the sudden and fierce arrival of the human fleet, the Varnock swarm had paused, something no one had ever seen before. The swarm, creatures born to conquer and consume, were silent, hesitant, as if facing a predator that matched their hunger and power. The vast armada of the Galactic Council ships, battered and broken but still standing, watched as the humans moved through space like shadows. Their ships were unlike any others in the galaxy, sleek, black, almost like pieces of night torn from the void itself, moving with a grace and speed that defied known physics. These vessels seemed to come from nowhere, arriving suddenly at critical points in the battle, striking with precision that destroyed entire Varnock carriers before they could even raise their defenses. No one in the Council had ever seen such technology, such control. Admiral Kesrix, standing on the bridge of his flagship, could hardly believe what he was witnessing. The humans made no announcements, no calls for parley or alliance. They fought silently, with deadly focus and no hint of hesitation or mercy. The great lion had awakened, and its roar was felt across the stars. As the battle moved closer to the edge of the Draco Rift, the humans began to coordinate in patterns too complex for the Council to immediately understand. Small squadrons would dart in and out, creating openings in the swarm's formation. Then larger ships would flood those gaps, breaking the enemy lines with overwhelming force. The Varnock tried to respond, sending their own biomechanical horrors, but the humans seemed to anticipate every move, countering with new tactics that turned the tide time and again. Amidst this chaos, strange reports began to come in from Council pilots. They spoke of the human ship's weapons, not just guns or missiles, but devices that warped gravity, that twisted the very fabric of space-time to crush or tear apart enemy vessels. Some claimed to have seen waves of energy that seemed to silence the violent hum of the Varnock machines, as if draining their power with unseen hands. The human fleet moved with terrifying efficiency, their pilots never hesitating, never faltering. And yet, there was no visible command structure. No signs of leadership, no communications other than brief bursts of orders given in a language the Council barely recognized. It was as if the humans operated as one living organism, a single mind controlling thousands of ships with a perfect will. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, their greatest enemy was also their greatest mystery. Behind the human fleet, the Council's surviving leaders gathered on a massive station orbiting Valharn Prime, one of the last safe worlds in the region. They watched the battle unfold on holoscreens, their faces pale and tense. Some whispered fearfully about what would happen once the humans had defeated the Varnock. Would they demand control? Would their silence turn into domination? But Admiral Kesrix spoke against the doubt. "We do not know their reasons," he said, "but right now, they stand with us. The Lions have returned, and they fight to save the galaxy." Meanwhile, deep within the largest human command ship, the Oblivion Crown, Commander Isla Niven studied the battlefield with cold eyes. She was one of the few humans who had spoken since the silence began, and even her words were rare and measured. She knew what the galaxy did not, that the Varnock were not the final threat. They were scouts, sent ahead to weaken defenses, to prepare the way for something worse. The humans had watched, waited, hidden in the darkness of space for generations. Their silence was not fear, but preparation for a war that no one else was ready to fight. Isla knew that revealing themselves now risked everything. But the Council had called, and she had answered. The human fleet fought not for glory or conquest, but because they understood the cost of losing. Their technology was born from sacrifice, their tactics honed in countless battles forgotten by history. They moved like hunters, striking fast and disappearing before the swarm could react. The Varnock had no answers, only fear. As the battle reached its peak, a massive Varnock hive ship, larger than any battle station, began to break through the human lines. It threatened to tear the Armada apart. The Council's hope faltered. But then, Isla ordered the unexpected. A single human vessel, smaller and faster than the others, darted straight into the hive ship's core. It exploded with a sudden burst of energy, triggering a chain reaction that shattered the hive's engines and weapons. The swarm collapsed, disorganized, and broken. The humans did not celebrate. They withdrew into the shadows once more, leaving the battered Council fleet to regroup. The message was clear. Humanity had returned, but on their own terms. The galaxy was safe for now, but the silence that followed the battle was deeper than ever. The Lions had awakened, and their eyes were watching far beyond the stars. The Council knew the war was far from over. Something waited in the darkness, and only the humans had the strength to face it. For now, The galaxy could only wait and hope that the lions would roar again when the time came. After the battle's fierce echoes faded and the last Varnock dreadnought drifted cold and dead in space, the Galactic Council's battered fleet drifted toward the massive human command ship called Aegis Aeternum. The Council's leaders were uneasy. They had seen the power of the humans, but they still knew almost nothing about them. When Admiral Kesrix was invited aboard the Aegis Aeternum, he entered a world unlike any other. The ship's interior was a blend of sleek design and raw strength, filled with technology that seemed to blend machine and biology. The corridors hummed softly with energy, and the air was heavy with quiet purpose. Waiting for Kesrix was Commander Isla Niven, the same woman who had led the daring strike that shattered the Varnock hive ship. Her eyes held a calm fire, and her voice was steady as she spoke of secrets long kept. Isla explained that humanity's silence had been a choice born not of fear but of necessity. Centuries ago, humans had discovered something terrible lurking in the shadows beyond known space, a darkness that could consume whole worlds. It was not the Varnock, they were only scouts, meant to weaken defenses before the true threat arrived. To prepare for this, humanity had hidden itself, retreating behind layers of advanced stealth and isolation. Earth became a fortress world, shielded by technologies so advanced that no one could find or touch it. The Great Silence was a mask, a way to protect not only themselves, but the entire galaxy from panic and chaos. Isla's words filled the room with a weight heavier than any weapon. The price of their power had been isolation and secrecy. They had given up alliances, friendships, and trust to build a force strong enough to face what was coming. The council leaders listened, some with skepticism, others with awe. Kesrix felt the burden of those words deep inside. The humans had chosen loneliness to guard a secret that could change everything. When Kesrix asked what that threat was, Isla's face hardened. She revealed glimpses of ancient warnings, star maps marked with strange signals, and data on monstrous forces moving through dark space forces that could swallow stars and leave only silence behind. The humans had been fighting a hidden war, building weapons and defenses while others had argued over borders and trade. Now, they stood ready to protect the galaxy if it was ready to stand with them. But Isla warned that trust could not come easily. To help the Council now was to risk revealing humanity's position, and enemies even more deadly might be drawn to the light. The humans had waited long for the right moment, and that moment had arrived, but the cost would be high. "We are lions," Isla said quietly, her eyes burning with resolve. "And lions do not hide while the herd bleeds. We have waited in the shadows, but now we must stand with the galaxy or lose everything." Kesrix understood. The power humanity wielded came at the price of sacrifice and solitude. The question was, if the Council and its many species could accept this new reality. Could they trust a species that had hidden so long, fought in silence, and now demanded a place at the front lines? The answer would come soon enough. As the human fleet moved to form a protective shield around the Council's remaining forces, the galaxy held its breath once more. The true war had only just begun. The galaxy was no longer silent. The human fleet, sleek and dark like shadows that had finally stepped into the light, moved with a purpose that electrified every star system watching from the distance. The Varnock swarm had been a brutal test, but the real threat was something much older, something hidden far beyond the edges of known space, a colossal force of ancient machines and living darkness known as the Eclipsers. These entities consumed stars and turned entire planets into barren husks. For centuries, humanity had prepared for this moment, training and building weapons in secret, waiting until the Eclipsers drew close enough to be faced head-on. The Galactic Council's fleets, battered and weary from fighting the Varnock, now found themselves fighting alongside them. Humans against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The humans called their formation the Lion's Roar, a battle tactic designed to strike deep into the heart of the Eclipsers' massive command ships and tear them apart before they could unleash their world-ending weapons. The first battle of the Lion's Roar took place near the dying star of Vitha Prime, where the Eclipsers' shadow fleet had gathered. As the Council ships held the line, the human fleet disappeared into the darkness, using stealth fields that made them nearly invisible. Then, like a storm breaking through a long night, they struck. Energy bursts tore through the Eclipser ships, engines exploded, and command towers crumbled. The humans moved fast, coordinated by a network of minds connected through advanced neural links, making their actions seem like a single living thing. The Council watched, amazed and hopeful, as entire sections of the Eclipser fleet were reduced to debris in moments. But the battle was far from over. The Eclipsers retaliated with terrifying power. Waves of dark energy swept through space, disabling weapons and tearing apart shields. Many Council ships were lost, but the human fleet pushed deeper, knowing that their sacrifice was the galaxy's hope. Commander Isla Niven led the assault, guiding her ships through impossible odds. She was calm and focused, a lioness guarding her pride. In the midst of the chaos, she made a choice that shocked everyone. She ordered a direct strike on the Eclipser flagship, a monstrous vessel that pulsed with black energy and radiated cold death. Her small squadron plunged into the heart of the enemy, dodging waves of destruction. The flagship's defenses were immense, but the humans fought with a ferocity born from knowing what was at stake. Explosions rocked the enemy hull, systems failed, and slowly, piece by piece, the monstrous ship began to crumble. Just as the flagship's core started to collapse, Isla's ship took a direct hit, sending her spiraling into darkness. The Council fleet thought the battle was lost, but then something unexpected happened. The other human ships surged forward with renewed strength, pushing the Eclipsers back. The flagship exploded in a blinding flash, and the Shadow fleet broke apart, retreating into the void. The galaxy erupted in cheers, but the victory was bittersweet. Many heroes had fallen, and the humans vanished once more into the dark, their ships slipping away silently. Admiral Kesrick stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars settle after the battle. He knew this was just the beginning. The humans had saved the Armada, but their silence had come at a terrible price. The galaxy had seen the roar of the lions, and now it understood that the quiet before was not weakness, but strength, waiting to be unleashed. The Council sent a message to Earth, a call to stand with the galaxy, not just in battle, but in trust and unity. The response was simple but powerful. The humans would be watching, ready to roar again when needed, guardians in the dark. The war against the Eclipsers was far from over, but the lions had returned, and with them came hope. In the deepest reaches of space, far beyond where eyes could see, a new alliance was born. The silence was broken, and the galaxy would never be the same again.